The last thing I ever thought I'd be reading out with approval will be something from the Evangelical Presbyterian Church in Northern Ireland, considering my own political views. However, if people are saying something sensible and trying to quell violence, I'm always happy to see that. And here is a statement of the Evangelical Presbyterian Church. This was sent to me by a friend in Northern Ireland who's a unionist, and who's a member of this church. Yes, I do talk to unionists. I don't regard them as strange, otherworldly, inhumane people. But anyway, racial violence raises its ugly head once again. Almost a year ago, our nation was shocked by the tragic events in Southport when three children were killed and 10 other people, eight of whom were children, were injured, some of them severely in a crazed knife attack. At the time, social media spread the false news that the perpetrator was an illegal immigrant who had crossed the channel in a boat. This led to an immediate orgy of violence and destruction directed against racial minorities across cities in England. Belfast, no stranger to sectarian violence down the years, was also the scene of rioting. Almost a year later, and worryingly similar scenes have occurred in Ballymena. This time, the catalyst for rioting has been a horrific sexual assault on a teenage girl. Previous attacks on women and girls by local men in the area did not descend into violence on the streets, and events in Ballymena on this occasion are clearly racially motivated. Once again, members of various ethnic minority communities have been targeted and are now living in fear. This madness must stop. Violence against people and property on any grounds must be condemned without reservation or qualification. While there are concerns about the level, nature, and potential impact of immigration, these can often be misplaced or exaggerated, and they must never be used to explain away violence against anyone's person or property. There can be no ifs, buts, or however following words of condemnation. Migration has long been part of human history. If we're to trace our own roots back far enough, we might find that a substantial number of us are the descendants of those that at one time immigrated to these shores. There are very few truly indigenous peoples, and there is such turbulence in our modern world that migration will continue to present major challenges. As evangelical Christians, we must apply biblical principles to this complex issue. We are commanded by Christ to love our neighbour, and there are repeated illustrations of this in the Gospels. Notice Christ's words in Matthew chapter 5, verse 47, and if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that? The Old Testament too contains clear teaching for the people of Israel, which still applies today. In Leviticus chapter 19, verse 34, we read, "But the stranger that dwelleth with you shall often be unto you as one born among you, and thou shalt love him as thyself." We must pray for all racial minorities in Ballymena and elsewhere in Northern Ireland who feel afraid and vulnerable because of this madness. Many of them were born and reared here. They belong here. They make a major contribution to the economy and to public services. Some of them play a full part in our churches. Others from other faith need to hear the gospel. We must welcome them, support them, and reach out to them. In the face of such naked hatred, let us as individuals and as congregations be sure to display wholehearted and unconditional biblical love to our neighbours. It's the only way. And amazingly, I agree with every single word of that. Unfortunately, I feel that possibly the evangelical Christians will find it flying over the top of the heads of people who seem to just want an excuse for a bit of property damage and seem to imagine that destroying houses will suddenly is a great idea. As I said the other day, I don't see any of them attacking people who've been grooming I hesitate to use the word indigenous, but the native population of Northern Ireland. There's long been complaints about grooming by paramilitaries. I don't see any of them confronting them, and I think you can guess why. I don't see them confronting the four elderly men I mentioned the other day who were running a grooming ring and hooking young ladies on drugs and pimping them. When they start confronting them as well, then they will at least be able to speak of not being engaged in a double standard. I still won't have any time for it. It's mob rule, and it's a lynch mob. But I'm very happy to see this statement from that church, and I hope at least a few people might listen to it.